Fall is starting to show up and show off here in Oklahoma, so I thought it would be a great time to try out some new Crockpot recipes. These are all recipes for the slow cooker that have sort of a cozy comfort food vibe. I'm sure many of you have heard of Mississippi pot roast. In fact, if you've heard of it or you've tried it out, leave me a comment below and let me know. I personally never have tried Mississippi pot roast because when I'm making roast, I'm usually using chuck roast, and I just feel like chuck roast has enough fat and flavor on its own. It doesn't really need a whole stick of butter, but maybe I'm wrong. You can let me know. So when I came across an idea for Mississippi chicken, using chicken breast, which is a much leaner meat, I thought, okay, I can definitely get on board with that. So I will leave a link in the description box below to the recipe that inspired me. I'm gonna make some changes though to turn this into a Mississippi chicken and noodles. We're gonna get this Mississippi chicken going in the slow cooker. My ingredients are here. I got a rather large package of chicken breast in my grocery order, so I'm actually only gonna use 2 of these because I want about 1.5 pounds of chicken breast. You could use more chicken if you like more meat. I just think 1.5 pounds is plenty for my family. Then I'm gonna sprinkle in 1 packet of au jus gravy mix and 1 packet of ranch seasoning, 6 or 8 pepperoncinis and some of the juice from the jar. How many pepperoncinis and how much juice you use is going to affect the heat. So if you like it spicy, you could use more. If you don't like as much kick, you can use less. Then I'm pouring in 2 cups of broth. I made mine from broth base, and the broth is an addition to the recipe that I found online that's linked in the description box because I'm going to be making some adjustments to this later on, so I want extra liquid in this recipe. Finishing it off by adding 1/2 cup, which is 1 stick or 8 tablespoons of butter. You want to cook that on low for 5 to 6 hours or high for 3 to 4 until the chicken is ready to shred up. My chicken is done. I have already removed it and shredded it, and before we put it back in, we're going to add some noodles, and I am actually going to use these frozen homemade fettuccine noodles from Wild Grain. They're sponsoring today's video, more on that later. I really think a fresh or frozen pasta is gonna work best if you wanna use Ream's noodles, if you wanna use like a refrigerated pasta, I think that would work fine too. If you are using a dry noodle, like a dried egg noodle, you might need to add more liquid to your mixture. I'm gonna add about 1/2 cup of half and half, and then I'm gonna put my chicken back in here on top. I'm gonna put the lid back on and keep this on high. It should take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes for my pasta to cook. Mine probably will take closer to 30, maybe even 45 minutes because it's cooking from frozen. Now I am actually going to serve this over the top of mashed potatoes. Yes, the chicken and noodles over the top of mashed potatoes. I do this with beef and noodles. The Mississippi chicken recipe doesn't necessarily have to go over mashed potatoes. It doesn't necessarily have noodles in it, but I just think that that will really take this over the top as like a really special, cozy, comfort food meal from the crock pot. So I'm keeping my mashed potatoes really simple because a lot of the flavor is gonna come from the chicken and noodles. Just potatoes, a little bit of milk, salt and pepper, butter, that's it. Just keeping it simple. I don't need them to be over the top flavorful because it's that chicken in the noodles and gravy that is gonna make it taste so fantastic. Now you could go a few different directions with vegetables for this one. I like to put something green on the plate if I can. So a salad would certainly fit the bill here, but I decided to go ahead and use my crock pot to make green beans. I just throw some frozen green beans, you could even use canned, you could use fresh if you want, into the crock pot with a little bit of butter, some broth, and any kind of seasoning. I mean, I've used lots of different kinds of all-purpose seasonings. I've used just a packet of Italian dressing mix. Just season them however you like, and then cooking them, kind of simmering them low and slow in the crock pot helps to soften the green beans, especially if they're cooking from frozen, and just make them really tender and flavorful without very much effort at all. To me, this feels like sort of a special dinner, you know, not a thing that you'd have once a week, but maybe something that you might have once a month, like for Sunday dinner or for a special occasion. So it's perfect for tonight because it's Tuesday, and on Tuesdays right now my family does family dinner. We try to all eat together at the same time at the table. We make it special. I usually pick up some special treats from a local bakery for us to taste test and try, and I usually pick out something I can kind of spend some time in my kitchen working on, just enjoying being in my kitchen, enjoying cooking, having people come and sit and chat with me while I cook and maybe sip on a glass of wine. So I think that this is the perfect meal for this particular night.
Stay true to that fire in your heart and your soul. Don't drench your desire in what you can't control. We fly try so hard to get there, and we might be lost but not forever. There's things in life you simply need to know, but sun and rain and trust in letting go. It takes a bit of suffering, sleepless nights and wandering, before you make it safely to the end, the end, the end.
One of the best ways to take a meal to that comfort food level is with homemade fresh baked bread. I mean, is there anything like the aroma of bread baking in your home? But if I'm being honest, making bread from scratch can be tough. I mean, it's time consuming, and quite frankly, the whole process can just be a little persnickety. So we have really been enjoying the luxury of having fresh baked bread and pastries without all the work, courtesy of today's sponsor, Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first of its kind, a subscription service featuring sourdough breads, pastries, and pastas that you can cook or bake directly from the freezer. You don't even have to thaw them out. Homemade quality bread from the freezer to your table in 25 minutes or less. With Wild Grain, you get to build your own box. And since they're constantly adding new and seasonal items, there are lots of things to try in addition to getting your favorites in each box. They even offer plant-based boxes, including hard to find plant-based croissants and fresh pastas. You might remember, if you've watched my channel for a while, that we're pretty passionate about battling housing and food insecurity. And that's why over the years, we've donated some of the profits from this channel to food banks and local charities. So one of the things that I love most about Wild Grain when I was researching this company is that for every new member, they donate 4 meals to people in need. I feel like fall is like the perfect time to try out Wild Grain because it's so great to add like some fresh breads and rolls and pastries and things like that to the meals that we're making this time of year. Soups and stews and comfort foods and holiday meals. Plus, you can get $30 off your first box and free croissants for life. Free croissants in every box for the life of your membership when you follow the link in the description box below, or go to wildgrain.com/Mindy30 and use my code Mindy30. Once again, that's wildgrain.com/Mindy30, or follow the link in the description box below and use my code Mindy30. Again, $30 off your first box plus free croissants for life. Yum. And thank you again to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to it. Tonight, I am going to try out a green chili stew, and this is mostly coming from my own brain. And when I say green chili, I mean green chili. You'll see what I mean. I was debating whether or not to use beef or pork for this soup, and I decided to go with these thick cut bone-in pork chops because I want the flavor from the fat and the bone. I will, of course, remove those and shred the meat and remove the fat and the bone later on, but it's going to add some flavor, I think, to this dish. I have 5 sort of small to medium potatoes. I'm going to peel and chop those up. I'm also going to chop up some onion, probably about ½ a cup total, and then these are just some little garlic cloves I have left, so I'll mince those and put those in the crock pot as well. To season this, I'm going to use a tablespoon of chili powder, a teaspoon of cumin, and a teaspoon of oregano. And I mentioned this is a green chili pork potato stew, right? Or something along those lines. So I basically have all of the green chilies represented here, at least that are available in a can. I have a can of diced green chilies, a can of diced tomatoes with green chilies, and then a can of green chili enchilada sauce that's going in this as well. And I want to add 4 cups of broth to this to submerge all the potatoes and all the ingredients completely. And I've had this carton in my pantry for a while. I normally make broth from bouillon, but I've had this one. It needs to get used, so I'm going to go ahead and use that today. So I'll get busy prepping my veggies, opening cans, getting everything measured out. I'm going to get all of that into the crock pot, and I'll get it going on low for about 6 hours before we come back and finish it up. It has been about 6 hours. The potatoes are tender. I took the pork chops out and I removed the meat from the bone and shredded it up, and then I put just the meat back in here and discarded everything else. And now I am going to stir in a cornstarch slurry. This is 3 tablespoons of cornstarch with about a quarter cup of water. I'm going to stir this in and pop the lid back on. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat up to high. I'm going to let this cook for another 30 minutes or so that cornstarch slurry can help thicken everything up just a little bit. But while that's cooking, I am going to get some bread in the oven so we can have some fresh, crusty sourdough bread to have along with this tonight.
Don't say you're ridiculous, you're not even close. Don't wish for indifference, you're not one of those. We fall, but we always rise up through it all. We get a little wiser.
I am finishing this off with a little shredded Monterey Jack cheese, and then it will be ready to enjoy. It smells delicious.
There's things in life you simply need to know. But sun and rain and trust in letting go.
For my family, fall also means lots of football watching. So when planning this video, I was also trying to come up with some kind of sandwich option that might be really great for those Saturdays when we're home watching college football. I decided to try out a Crockpot Philly cheesesteak recipe, but in the grand tradition of recipes on my channel, I like to give options. So we're gonna put a little twist on this one and turn it into something just a little bit different. I think typically speaking, you would use like a sirloin or even a ribeye if you wanna go fancy, thinly sliced for Philly cheesesteaks. Since I'm making this in the slow cooker, you could even opt for like a small chuck roast or something because it's gonna cook to the point where it'll be really tender and you can shred it up. I'm taking a little bit of a shortcut though, and I am using beef for carne picada. It's basically super thin sliced beef. It would be used mostly for tacos or maybe for stews. And since they gave me 2 pounds of it in my grocery order, I'm actually gonna double this recipe. So if you just wanna make a half recipe, I think that would probably be plenty to feed 4 to 5 people. So I have my meat in the crock pot. I'm gonna season it with a teaspoon of onion powder, which is about all I have left. That needs to go on the list. A teaspoon of garlic powder. Oops, a little bit more, there we go. A tablespoon of Worcestershire, plus a little bit more for good measure, just because I really like Worcestershire. A tablespoon of red wine vinegar. Another shortcut I'm taking, instead of chopping up fresh onions and peppers for this, and especially since I'm gonna cook it in the slow cooker so it will have plenty of time to cook through, is I am going to use this package of 3 pepper onion blend. So it has onions, red bell pepper, green bell pepper, and yellow bell pepper. And now I'm gonna add a few teaspoons, probably about a tablespoon or so of beef broth bouillon and 3 cups of water. Stir that around just a little bit to make sure that the broth gets down in there and the seasonings get distributed. Low for 5 to 6, high for 3 to 4. Then we'll come back to it. My meat and veggies have been cooking for about 6 hours. They smell absolutely amazing. Now at this point, you can make some Philly cheesesteak sandwiches. Just put the meat and veggie mixture onto some rolls or some buns, top it with a little provolone cheese, maybe pop it under the broiler for a minute or 2, and you've got yourself a really delicious toasted sandwich. But I'm gonna do something different. I am adding a bag of frozen tortellini. And since I am basically making a double batch, I'm using the big family size bag. If you're making half of what I'm making, which would be, you know, more of, I think, a normal size recipe, you could probably just use one of the smaller bags. I'm gonna make sure that that is submerged in the liquid, and then I'm gonna pop the lid back on and let it cook on high for probably about 20 to 30 minutes. It does not take long for those tortellini to cook through. Then I am slicing up about half of my package of provolone slices just into little cubes so that they're easier to incorporate into the mixture, and then I can lay the rest of the slices on top and pop the lid back on just for another minute or 2 to get that cheese nice and melty, and it will be ready to serve. And since I didn't use my rolls to make sandwiches, I'm gonna toast them up in the oven and make a really delicious garlic toast to go along with this, and a green veggie on the side.
And if you ever wonder, there is nothing wrong with a little thunder.
I thought I'd give you a quick review of these recipes and just a few things I might change when I make them again. The chicken and noodles was delicious. The only thing I would change is to add an extra cup of liquid at the beginning. So I think I used 2 cups of broth. I would add an extra cup of broth or water. This is because I would have liked to have a little bit more gravy, a little bit more sauce in order to cover the mashed potatoes. It was still really tasty, but I just wanted a little more gravy. The pork and potato stew was really good, and it was nice to have a soup recipe for potatoes that isn't like a creamy potato soup or like a cheesy potato soup. I guess I did put cheese in this. I might try it with beef instead of pork. I was trying to do something a little bit different. I probably would like the flavor of the beef a little bit better with it, but I love that it was a soup and it was like perfect for dipping the sourdough bread in. The cheesesteak tortellini was delicious. I'm really glad that I tried that and that I made it that way. Next time I would definitely do a half recipe, just a pound of meat, a small bag of tortellini, cut the other ingredients in half because we've been eating the leftovers for a few days now. And the other thing I would change if I'm turning it into a tortellini instead of into sandwiches is just to use an Italian blend, shredded cheese, like a mozzarella and provolone blend, or even just a plain mozzarella. Everything we got from Wild Grain was so delicious, especially the croissants. Oh my goodness, the croissants are to die for. So don't forget to check them out. They're linked in the description box, and when you use my code Mindy30, you can get those croissants free for the life of your subscription plus $30 off your first box. YouTube thinks you want to watch one of these videos next, and if so, I'll see you there.